The mysterious message. Sarah Chen never expected her ordinary life as a Seattle mechanic to change dramatically on a rainy Tuesday morning. The neon signs of auto repair shops reflected in puddles outside her garage as she worked on yet another malfunctioning hover conversion. The year was 2045, and while humanity had made impressive technological strides, they were still far from the advanced civilizations that populated the countless sci-fi novels Sarah devoured in her spare time. The message arrived while she was elbow-deep in an engine, her hands covered in grease. Her neural implant, standard issue these days for most mechanics, pinged with an urgent notification. Sarah almost ignored it, assuming it was another complaint from a dissatisfied customer about the anti-grav parking assist. Attention! Regarding the estate of Her Imperial Majesty, Empress Cathara of the Galactic Concordat. Sarah blinked, certain her neural implant was malfunctioning. She ran a quick diagnostic, but everything checked out normal. The message continued to float in her field of vision, its official-looking seal pulsing gently. "This must be some kind of joke," she muttered, wiping her hands on a shop rag. But as she began to read further, her skepticism turned to disbelief. According to the message, her grandmother, who Sarah had always known as the kind old lady who ran a small bookstore in Chinatown, had actually been the exiled empress of a vast galactic empire. More incredibly, Sarah was now her sole heir. "Your presence is required at the following coordinates within 48 Earth hours to claim your inheritance and prevent a succession crisis that could destabilize a significant portion of the known galaxy." Sarah laughed out loud, the sound echoing through her empty garage. But her laughter died as a sleek, silver vehicle unlike anything she'd ever seen materialized outside her shop. It hovered silently, its surface seeming to ripple like liquid metal. 2 figures emerged, and they were definitely not human. The first was tall and elegant, with crystalline skin that refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. The second was shorter, more compact, with blue-tinted scales and eyes that glowed like distant stars. "Greetings, Your Imperial Highness," the crystalline being said, bowing deeply. "I am Ambassador Xerix, and this is Security Chief Nax. We are here to escort you to your empire." Sarah backed away, her mind racing. There must be some mistake. My grandmother ran a bookstore. She made the best dumplings in Seattle. She couldn't have been. An empress in exile. Chief Nax finished, her scaled lips curving in a smile. "Your grandmother was much more than she appeared, Your Highness. She chose exile on Earth to protect you and your mother from those who would harm you. But now, with her passing, the Empire needs its rightful heir." Sarah's mind flashed to all the strange little moments that suddenly made sense. Her grandmother's impossibly vast knowledge of the stars, the strange symbols she sometimes drew while lost in thought, the way she would sometimes stare at the night sky with such longing. "But I'm just a mechanic," Sarah protested weakly. Ambassador Xerix's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been amusement. "You are far more than that, Your Highness. You are the last of the Catharan bloodline, carriers of the most advanced technological knowledge in the galaxy. Your very DNA contains secrets that could reshape civilizations. And unfortunately," Chief Nax added, her expression growing serious, "you are not the only one who knows this now. Your grandmother's passing has revealed your existence to those who would use you for their own ends. We must leave immediately." As if to emphasize the point, a distant explosion rocked the street. Sarah turned to see 3 black ships appearing in the sky, their designs aggressive and predatory. "The Crimson Syndicate," Nax growled, drawing a weapon that hummed with barely contained energy. "They move faster than we anticipated." Sarah looked at her garage, her life's work, everything she had built. But she also thought of her grandmother, of all the mysteries that had surrounded her, of the responsibility she had carried in secret all these years. "How do I know I can trust you?" she asked, even as another explosion lit up the morning sky. Ambassador Xerix extended a crystalline hand, and in it was a small, familiar object, her grandmother's jade pendant, the one she had never taken off. "Your grandmother said you would recognize this. She also said to tell you, the stars have always been in your blood, little one." Sarah's throat tightened. It was exactly what her grandmother used to say when they would stargaze together. With trembling fingers, she took the pendant. "What do I need to do?" "For now, run," Nax shouted as energy weapons began firing from the approaching ships. Sarah sprinted for the silver vehicle, her mind racing with questions. But one thing was certain: her ordinary life as a Seattle mechanic was over. As the vehicle's doors sealed behind them and they shot into the sky, Sarah clutched her grandmother's pendant and watched her old life disappear beneath the clouds. She was about to learn just how vast the galaxy really was, and more importantly, her place in it. What she didn't know yet was that her skills as a mechanic, combined with the incredible technological knowledge encoded in her DNA, would make her either the Empire's greatest hope or its most dangerous weapon. The silver ship pierced through Earth's atmosphere, and Sarah Chen, newly discovered heir to a galactic empire, began her journey into a universe far stranger and more wonderful than any of her beloved sci-fi novels had prepared her for. Learning to be an empress. The transition from Earth's atmosphere to deep space happened so smoothly that Sarah barely felt it. The silver ship's interior adjusted automatically to her comfort, and through the viewing panels, she watched her home planet shrink until it was just another blue marble among countless stars. "Your grandmother insisted on using primitive Earth transportation during her exile," Ambassador Zirix explained, his crystalline, form-catching starlight. "She said it helped her maintain her cover, though I suspect she simply enjoyed the simplicity of it." Sarah ran her hand along the ship's console, her mechanic's instincts taking over. "This technology, it's incredible. The energy conversion rates must be astronomical." She paused, surprised at her own understanding. "How do I know that?" "The knowledge is in your blood," Chief Nax replied, skillfully piloting the ship through a field of debris. "The Catharan lineage carries not just genetic information, but technological knowledge passed down through generations. It will continue to surface as you adapt to your new role." A holographic display materialized in front of Sarah, showing a massive space station that seemed to be made of interwoven strands of light and metal. "Welcome to Haven's Crown, the current seat of the Galactic Concordat's government," Zirix announced. "Your grandmother established this neutral territory to foster peace between different species and factions." As they docked at the station, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The landing bay was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes, some humanoid, others completely alien to her understanding. Many stopped to bow as she passed, while others whispered among themselves. "They're wondering if you're really her heir," Nax explained quietly. "If you have what it takes to hold the Empire together." Sarah straightened her shoulders, remembering how her grandmother always carried herself with quiet dignity, even when just working in her bookstore. "Then I guess I'll have to show them." The next few hours were a whirlwind of introductions and ceremonies. Sarah met the Council of Elders, a group of ancient beings who served as advisors to the Empress. She was fitted for ceremonial robes that seemed to shift colors with her emotions. Through it all, fragments of knowledge kept surfacing in her mind: protocols she'd never learned, languages she'd never studied, technological concepts that seemed to flow naturally from some deep well of inherited memory. But it was in the Imperial workshop that Sarah truly felt at home. The vast chamber was filled with projects in various stages of completion, devices that defied Earth's current understanding of physics, machines that could reshape matter at its most fundamental level. "Your grandmother spent much of her time here before her exile," Zirix explained. "The Catharan gift for technology is legendary. Some say your ancestors learned their secrets from the universe itself." Sarah picked up what looked like a half-finished quantum manipulator, her fingers immediately knowing where each component should go. "This is amazing, but why did she leave all this? Why choose exile on Earth?" A shadow passed over Zirix's crystalline features. "The Crimson Syndicate. They discovered a way to extract and weaponize Cathara knowledge directly from the source through DNA extraction. Your grandmother fled to protect you and your mother, to keep this power out of their hands. And now they're after me, Sarah said, remembering the attack in Seattle. Yes, Nax confirmed, her scaled hand resting on her weapon. But they're not the only threat. There are those within the Concordat who believe the Empire has grown too powerful, who would use this transition to break it apart. Sarah set down the quantum manipulator, her mind racing with possibilities. Then we need to show them why the Empire is necessary. My grandmother built Haven's crown to bring people together. Maybe, she paused, an idea forming. Maybe we can use that same principle on a larger scale. She turned to a workbench, her hands moving with newfound confidence as she began sketching designs. The inherited knowledge flowed more freely now, combining with her practical experience as a mechanic to create something new. What are you planning? Xerix asked, leaning forward with interest. A network, Sarah explained, her excitement growing. Using modified versions of the quantum manipulator technology, we can create connection points throughout the Empire, allowing instant communication and transport between worlds. No more isolation, no more easy targets for the Syndicate to pick off one by one. Nax studied the designs, her glowing eyes widening. This could work, but the power requirements would be enormous. Sarah smiled, thinking of her grandmother's jade pendant. That's where this comes in. It's not just jewelry, it's a key to something bigger, isn't it? Zurix's crystalline form pulsed with approval. Your grandmother's power core. She split it into 3 parts before her exile. The pendant is one piece. The other 2 are hidden somewhere in the Empire, Sarah finished, the knowledge surfacing in her mind. Like a treasure hunt, she wanted her successor to prove themselves worthy by finding them. And to ensure no one could take the power by force, Nax added, the pieces must be united willingly by the rightful heir. Sarah looked out at the vast expanse of space visible through the workshop's viewport. Somewhere out there were the missing pieces of her grandmother's legacy, and the key to protecting everything she had built. Then I guess we better start hunting, she said, slipping the pendant around her neck. But first, I need to understand exactly what I'm inheriting. Show me everything, every world in the Empire, every threat we're facing, every ally we might have. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. As Zurix and Nax began pulling up holographic maps and reports, Sarah felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. She was still the same person who loved fixing engines in her Seattle garage, but now she had a chance to fix something much bigger. Her grandmother had trusted her with this responsibility, had prepared her for it in ways she was only beginning to understand. The Crimson Syndicate was coming. Political forces were moving against the Empire. But Sarah Chen, the mechanic who became an empress, was ready to face them all, with a wrench in one hand and the power of ancient technology in the other. She just hoped she could live up to her grandmother's legacy. The hunt begins. The first attack came sooner than anyone expected. Sarah was studying historical records in the Imperial Library when the station's alarms began blaring. Haven's crown's crystalline walls pulsed with warning lights as Chief Nax burst into the room. Syndicate ships, she reported, her scaled skin flickering with combat readiness. 3 warships and what appears to be a boarding vessel. They're using some kind of cloaking technology we've never seen before. Sarah's mind instantly connected the dots, inherited knowledge merging with her mechanic's intuition. They're not using cloaking tech. They're bending light around their hulls using modified quantum manipulators, similar to the ones in the workshop, but weaponized. How did they get that technology? Zerix demanded, his crystalline form clouding with concern. They must have had a spy in my grandmother's court, Sarah realized. Someone who got close enough to steal partial blueprints. She rushed to the nearest console, her fingers flying over the holographic controls. But if they're using our tech, we can use that against them. The station's main viewport showed the attacking ships, their forms shimming like heat waves in the void of space. Sarah accessed Haven's Crown's defense systems, making rapid adjustments based on the knowledge flowing through her mind. There, she muttered, implementing the changes. If they're bending light, we just need to bend it back. The station's defensive arrays hummed to life, emitting precise frequencies that interacted with the Syndicate ship's cloaking fields. Suddenly, their true forms became visible, ugly, predatory vessels bristling with weapons. Security teams to your stations, Nax commanded through the station's comm system. Prepare for potential boarders. Wait, Sarah said, studying the enemy formation. Something's not right. This attack, it's too obvious, too direct. The Syndicate is smarter than this. Her eyes widened as realization struck. This is a distraction. Quick, check the power core readings. Xerix accessed another console, his crystalline form pulsing with alarm. Energy fluctuations in the lower levels. Someone's trying to access the station's main reactor. While we're focused on the ships up here, they're trying to steal power core research from below, Sarah concluded. Nax, can you handle the ships? The security chief grinned, her teeth gleaming. With the cloaking advantage neutralized. Easily. Good. Xerix, you're with me. Sarah grabbed a nearby tool belt, fastening it around her waist. The weight of the tools felt comforting, familiar. Time to show them why you don't mess with a mechanic's workshop. They raced through the station's corridors, passing security teams rushing to their posts. Sarah's inherited knowledge guided them through maintenance shortcuts and hidden passages her grandmother had built into Haven's Crown's design. The reactor chamber should be just ahead, Xerix reported as they approached a sealed doorway. Life signs detected inside, at least 5 intruders. Sarah pulled out what looked like a standard wrench but hummed with hidden energy. My grandmother's designs always had backdoors, ways to shut things down if they fell into the wrong hands. She approached a seemingly ordinary panel beside the door. Let's see if I can remember how to access this one. Her fingers found hidden pressure points, pressing them in a specific sequence. The panel slid aside, revealing a complex array of circuits and crystal matrices. Sarah studied them for a moment, then began making precise adjustments. What are you doing? Xerix asked, keeping watch. The reactor's containment field can be inverted, Sarah explained, working quickly. Instead of keeping energy in, we can use it to push everything else out. But we need to be careful. Too much power, and we could damage the station. Inside the reactor chamber, she could hear voices arguing in harsh whispers. They were running out of time. There, Sarah said, making a final adjustment. When I give the signal, be ready to move. She pressed a final sequence, and the reactor's hum changed pitch. Inside the chamber, someone shouted in alarm. Sarah hit the door release and chaos erupted. The inverted containment field pulsed outward, sending the Syndicate infiltrators tumbling through the air. Their stolen data crystals dropped from their hands, scattering across the floor. Sarah and Xerix rushed in, using the zero-gravity effect to their advantage. Sarah's wrench connected with one infiltrator's helmet, cracking it. Xerix's crystalline form refracted energy blasts, sending them back at their attackers. In moments, the fight was over. Security team to the reactor chamber, Sarah called through her comm. We have prisoners to process. As gravity returned to normal and the infiltrators were secured, Sarah examined the data crystals they'd tried to steal. Just as I thought, they were after research on power core integration. They're trying to figure out how my grandmother's core worked. And now they know you're already beginning to access your inherited knowledge, Xerix observed. They'll be more desperate than ever to capture you. Sarah nodded, pocketing the crystals. Then we need to move faster. The network I proposed, we start building it immediately, and we step up our search for the other power core pieces. Alert chimed through the station's comm system. Syndicate ships neutralized, Nax reported, satisfaction evident in her voice. Though I suspect this won't be the last we see of them. No, Sarah agreed, looking around the reactor chamber thoughtfully. But next time we'll be better prepared. she turned to Xerix. "Have the Council of Elders meet me in an hour. It's time to make some changes to how we do things around here." As they left the reactor chamber, Sarah felt a strange mix of emotions. The fight had been terrifying, yes, but also exhilarating. For the first time, she'd truly felt the combination of her inherited knowledge and her own skills working in perfect harmony. She wasn't just playing at being an empress anymore, she was becoming one. Above them, through Haven's crown's transparent ceiling, stars stretched into infinity. Somewhere out there were the missing pieces of her grandmother's power core and the key to protecting everything she had built. But first, Sarah had an empire to reorganize. Her grandmother had ruled through tradition and careful political balance. Sarah would rule through innovation and connection. She was going to bring mechanics' practicality to imperial politics, whether the old guard liked it or not. And anyone who tried to stop her would learn that on Earth, mechanics learned to fix problems one way or another, even if they had to break a few things first to get the job done right. Secrets of the Stars. 3 weeks into her reign, Sarah stood before the Council of Elders, presenting her plan for the Empire's future. The ancient chamber hummed with tension as holographic displays showed her proposed network of quantum communication hubs. "By connecting our worlds directly," she explained, pointing to the intricate web of light paths between systems, "we create more than just a defense network. We create unity through technology." Her fingers traced a path through the display. Each hub will serve as both a communication center and an emergency transport point. One of the elders, a being composed entirely of shifting plasma, moved forward. "This is unprecedented, Empress. The power requirements alone will be met," Sarah interrupted confidently. "I've already begun adapting the designs from my grandmother's archives, combining them with what I learned on Earth. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones." Before the council could respond, Chief Nax burst into the chamber. "Your Majesty, we've detected an energy signature matching the second power core fragment. It's coming from the mining colony on Keras Prime." Sarah's heart raced. Keras Prime, a harsh desert world known for its valuable mineral deposits and dangerous working conditions. Of course her grandmother would hide a piece there. She'd always loved testing people. "How reliable is the reading?" Sarah asked, already moving toward the door. "Strong enough to be certain," Nax replied. "But there's more. The Crimson Syndicate is already there. They must have detected it too." Sarah turned to the council. "We'll continue this discussion later. Right now, we have a power core to recover." Minutes later, aboard her grandmother's personal ship, now modified with Sarah's own improvements, they rocketed through space toward Keras Prime. Sarah had exchanged her formal robes for a practical mechanics jumpsuit, complete with reinforced panels and hidden tool compartments. "The mining colony is in lockdown," Xerix reported, his crystalline form reflecting the ship's emergency lights. "The Syndicate has taken control of the main facilities. They're holding the miners hostage." Sarah studied the colony's schematics, her inherited knowledge filling in details about its construction. These mining complexes all follow standard imperial designs, which means she zoomed in on a section of the map. There should be maintenance tunnels here, and here. Ways to access critical systems without going through the main corridors. "The Syndicate will expect us to use those," Nax warned. "They'll expect the Empire to use them," Sarah corrected with a smile. "But they won't expect us to use them the way an Earth mechanic would." Their ship landed some distance from the main colony, using the planet's magnetic fields to mask their approach. Sarah led them to a seemingly solid rock face, where she quickly located a hidden access panel. "These tunnels were designed for maintenance drones," she explained, working to override the security protocols. But with a few adjustments, the panel clicked open, revealing a narrow passage. "We can use them too. Just try to stay close to the ground." They crawled through the tunnels, Sarah leading the way with the confidence of someone who had spent years navigating tight spaces to reach broken machinery. Her neural implant, now enhanced with imperial technology, helped her map their route through the complex network. The power core's signature is strongest near the central processing facility, Zurich's whispered. But I'm detecting heavy syndicate presence there. Good thing we're not going to the processing facility then, Sarah replied. We're going under it. She led them to a junction where several maintenance tunnels converged. The space was cramped, filled with pipes and conduits that carried various resources through the mining complex. Sarah pulled out her modified wrench and began making adjustments to a particularly large pipe. The processed ore gets moved through these systems, she explained. But more importantly, so does the waste heat from the refiners. If we can overload the heat exchange system. A diversion, Nax asked. Better. A way to flush them out. Literally. Sarah made a final adjustment. When I trigger this, superheated steam will flood their position. Non-lethal, but very effective at clearing a room. They'll have to evacuate or cook. She activated the sequence, and soon they heard shouts of alarm from above as superheated steam filled the processing facility. Through gaps in the ceiling panels, they watched syndicate forces scrambling to escape. Now for the tricky part, Sarah said, pulling out her grandmother's jade pendant. As soon as she held it up, it began to pulse with energy. The second piece is close, very close. They followed the pendant's pulsing guidance to a section of wall that looked completely ordinary, to anyone who hadn't inherited generations of technological knowledge. Sarah ran her hands over the surface, feeling for microscopic imperfections. My grandmother loved puzzles, she muttered, but she also believed that the best hiding place was often the most obvious one. She pressed a sequence of points on the wall, and a hidden compartment slid open. Inside was what appeared to be a simple piece of machinery, a pump regulator, the kind used in thousands of mining operations across the galaxy. But Sarah could see what others couldn't, the impossible perfection of its construction, the subtle ways it bent light around itself. The second piece of the power core, she breathed, carefully lifting it. Hidden in plain sight, disguised as the most mundane piece of equipment imaginable. As soon as she touched it, both the regulator and her pendant began to glow. Knowledge flooded her mind. Snippets of her grandmother's memories, technical specifications, and something else. A warning. We need to move, she said urgently. Now. They barely made it back to the maintenance tunnel when explosions rocked the facility. The Syndicate, unable to reach the power core piece themselves, had decided to bring down the entire complex. They're trying to bury us. Nax shouted over the rumbling. Not today, Sarah replied, pulling out her tools. Everyone grab onto something. She quickly connected the regulator to her pendant, and the combined pieces pulsed with incredible energy. Sarah felt power surge through her as she accessed knowledge she hadn't even known she possessed. With precise mental commands, she created a quantum field around them just as the facility began to collapse. The field protected them from the falling debris, but more importantly, it allowed Sarah to bend space itself. For a moment, they existed everywhere and nowhere, and then they materialized safely aboard their ship, just as the mining complex imploded behind them. How did you? Zurix began, his crystalline form flickering with amazement. I'm not entirely sure, Sarah admitted, looking at the two pieces of the power core with wonder. But I think I'm starting to understand why the Syndicate wants this technology so badly. She secured both pieces in a shielded compartment, and why my grandmother went to such lengths to protect it. As their ship lifted off from Keras Prime, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. With two pieces of the power core, her network plan was now more feasible than ever. But she also had to consider the responsibility that came with such power. Set course for Haven's Crown, she ordered. It's time to show the Council exactly what we're capable of. She looked down at her mechanic's jumpsuit, now covered in dust and grime, and smiled. Sometimes the best solutions really were the simplest ones. You just needed the right tools and the courage to use them. One piece of the power core remained hidden somewhere in the vast empire. But for the first time, Sarah felt truly confident in her ability to find it. After all, she wasn't just an empress now, she was a mechanic with the knowledge of ages at her fingertips. And she was just getting started. Betrayal and power. Back at Haven's Crown, Sarah's triumph was short-lived. She had barely finished securing the 2 power core pieces in her grandmother's heavily fortified vault when alarms began blaring throughout the station. This time, however, the threat wasn't external. "Your Majesty." Nax burst into the vault chamber, her scales rippling with agitation. "We have multiple security breaches throughout the lower levels. Someone's trying to access restricted areas using high-level authorization codes." Sarah's blood ran cold. Inside help. "The spy who stole my grandmother's designs. They never left," Xerix finished, his crystalline form darkening with concern. Sarah quickly sealed the vault, her mind racing. "How many security teams do we have available?" "That's the problem," Nax growled. "Half our forces aren't responding to commands. It's like they're being controlled," Sarah finished, remembering something from her grandmother's technical archives. The quantum manipulator technology, it can be modified to influence neural patterns. She clenched her fists. Someone's been planning this for a long time. The station shuddered as multiple explosions rocked its lower levels. Through the viewport, Sarah watched as several ships undocked without authorization, breaking formation and vanishing into hyperspace. "They're creating chaos," she realized. "But why? The power core pieces are secure." Her eyes widened as another memory surfaced, not from her grandmother's inherited knowledge, but from her own experience as a mechanic. "The vault's not the target," she said urgently. "Quick, when was the last time anyone checked on the quantum network prototype?" They raced to the research lab where Sarah had been developing her network of communication hubs. The doors had been sealed, but Sarah could hear activity inside. She pressed her hand against the wall, feeling the vibrations. "They're dismantling it," she said, taking the core components, with those and the stolen designs. "They could build their own network," Xerix concluded, "one they control." Sarah pulled out her tools, including the modified wrench that had served her so well. "Not if I can help it. Nax, get your uncompromised security teams to seal off this section. Xerix, I need you to access the station's power grid. We're going to try something crazy." Working quickly, Sarah began reconfiguring the corridor's environmental systems. On Earth, when a machine's been compromised, sometimes the best solution is a controlled shutdown. The same principle should work here. She connected her wrench to an access panel, using it to channel power from her grandmother's pendant. The corridor's lights flickered as she rerouted energy flows. "What exactly are you doing?" Nax asked, coordinating with her teams through secure channels. "Creating a localized quantum disruption field," Sarah explained, making final adjustments. "It should temporarily disable any tech more advanced than basic life support, including mind control devices." "But won't that affect the entire section?" Xerix asked. "Including our own equipment." Sarah smiled grimly. "That's why we're doing this the old-fashioned way." She pulled a simple mechanical lockpick from her tool belt. "Sometimes the best technology is no technology at all." She activated the disruption field. Immediately, the corridor went dark as advanced systems shut down. They could hear shouts of confusion from inside the lab as the infiltrators' equipment failed. Sarah moved quickly, using her lockpick to manually override the door's emergency release. The door slid open to reveal a dozen figures stumbling in the darkness, their high-tech weapons and tools useless. "Now," Sarah shouted. Nax's teams moved in with primitive but effective stun weapons, simple chemical propellants that needed no advanced technology to function. In moments, the infiltrators were subdued. As emergency lights came back on, Sarah approached the leader of the infiltrators. She recognized him immediately, one of her grandmother's most trusted advisors. "Counselor Venn," she said, her voice hard. "I should have known. You always did prefer brute force over elegance." The elderly counselor sneered. "You know nothing of elegance, little mechanic. Your grandmother was a fool to choose you." The Empire needs strength, not your primitive solutions. Sarah knelt beside him, holding up her pendant. Primitive, maybe, but effective. You know what I learned fixing engines on Earth? The most complex problems often have the simplest solutions. You just have to be willing to get your hands dirty. She stood, addressing the security teams. Get them to holding cells, and check everyone on the station for signs of neural tampering. This ends now. As the prisoners were led away, Sarah surveyed the damage to her prototype. The infiltrators had managed to steal key components, but not the most important part: the control algorithms she developed based on her own experiences. They have pieces of the puzzle, she told Nax and Xerix, but not the whole picture, not the human element that makes it work. What do we do now? Xerix asked. Sarah's expression was determined. We accelerate our plans. The network isn't just about communication anymore, it's about protection. We need to be able to detect and prevent this kind of infiltration across the entire Empire. She moved to a console, beginning to input new designs. And I think I know where to find the last piece of the power core. My grandmother wouldn't have left us defenseless against this kind of threat. Where? Nax asked. Think about it. We found one piece in plain sight, disguised as something mundane. The other was hidden behind complex security. For the third, Sarah pulled up a star chart, zooming in on a particular sector. We look somewhere obvious but dangerous, somewhere only someone who truly understands both Imperial technology and practical mechanics would think to go. The chart focused on a massive shipbreaking yard, a graveyard of derelict ships and abandoned stations floating in the void. The Imperial salvage yards, Sarah announced. We're better to hide something valuable than among things people think are worthless. It's perfect, Xerix realized, hidden in plain sight, but protected by the inherent dangers of the yard itself. And we need to move fast, Sarah added, already gathering her tools. Ven's allies will figure it out too, once they realize what we're thinking. She looked at the complex web of conspiracy they'd uncovered. Council members turned traitor, security forces compromised, technology turned against its makers. It would have seemed overwhelming just a few weeks ago. But Sarah wasn't just a mechanic anymore, and she wasn't just an empress. She was both, and that made her something unique in the galaxy, someone who could see both the big picture and the small details that made everything work. Prepare a ship, she ordered, and bring every low-tech tool we can find. Where we're going, the simplest solutions might be our only chance of survival. As they rushed to prepare for their mission, Sarah caught her reflection in a viewport. She was covered in grease and dirt, her mechanic's jumpsuit torn and stained, her hair a mess. She looked nothing like the traditional image of an empress. But maybe that was exactly what the Empire needed right now, someone who wasn't afraid to get their hands dirty to fix what was broken. The salvage yards awaited, and with them, the final piece of her grandmother's legacy. Sarah just hoped they could reach it before their enemies did, or everything she'd fought to protect would be torn apart by the very technology meant to unite it. Ghosts in the machine. The Imperial salvage yards stretched before them like a metallic ocean, countless derelict ships and stations drifting in an endless dance of decay. Sarah stood at the helm of their small craft, carefully navigating through the debris field. She'd chosen a simple vessel for this mission, something with minimal advanced technology that couldn't be compromised. Detecting multiple ships entering the sector, Nax reported, using basic radar instead of quantum sensors. Looks like we're not the only ones who figured out where to look. Syndicate ships, Xerix confirmed, his crystalline form dimmed to reduce energy emissions. And Imperial vessels. Ven's allies must have broken out their supporters. Sarah nodded grimly. Good thing we came prepared. She patted the manual controls. Sometimes old tech is the best tech. They'd loaded their ship with an assortment of Earth-style tools and equipment, things that would seem primitive to most Imperial citizens, but couldn't be hacked or controlled remotely. Sarah's tool belt was heavy with wrenches, cutters, and mechanical devices that had served her well in her Seattle garage. "The power core piece has to be somewhere in this sector," she said, studying the cluttered space before them. Knowing my grandmother, she would have hidden it somewhere that only a true mechanic would think to look. Her eyes fell on a particular wreck, an ancient maintenance vessel, its hull scarred by centuries of impacts and repairs. That's where I'd hide something if I wanted to be sure only someone who understood machines could find it. They carefully maneuvered their ship closer, using the surrounding debris for cover. As they approached, Sarah's pendant began to pulse with energy, confirming her intuition. "We'll need to board it," she said, pulling on a mechanical pressure suit. "No fancy electronics, just reliable seals and oxygen tanks. Nax, can you handle the ship? We might need a quick exit." The security chief nodded, her scaled hands moving confidently over the manual controls. "Just don't take too long. Our friends out there are getting closer." Sarah and Xerix made their way to the airlock, carrying only what they absolutely needed. The void of space stretched around them as they crossed to the derelict vessel, using simple magnetic boots to stay anchored. The maintenance ship's airlock was sealed, but Sarah had expected that. She pulled out a manual pump and began working on the mechanism. "This is how we did it in the old days," she explained to Xerix. "Before quantum locks and neural interfaces." Inside, the ship was dark and cold, preserved by the vacuum of space. Their helmet lights revealed corridors cluttered with ancient tools and spare parts. To most people, it would look like worthless junk. But to Sarah's trained eye, every piece told a story. "Look at these tools," she said, examining a rack of equipment. "They're not random. They're arranged in a specific sequence, like a code." She began following the pattern, moving deeper into the ship. Each room they passed contained more carefully arranged machinery, creating a trail that only someone with true mechanical knowledge would recognize. Suddenly, energy weapons fire lit up the space outside the viewports. The battle had begun. "They're engaging each other," Xerix reported, monitoring the simple radio channels. "The Syndicate and the traitors, they're fighting over who gets here first." "Then we better not waste time," Sarah replied, quickening her pace. They reached the ship's engineering section, where Sarah found exactly what she expected, a massive tangle of pipes, conduits, and machinery that would look like chaos to most observers. But to her, it was a beautiful puzzle. "The pieces are arranged to direct power flow," she said, tracing the patterns with her hands. "Not randomly, but in a specific sequence. If you followed standard Imperial protocol, you'd try to optimize it, make it more efficient. But if you understand real machines," she began adjusting valves and connections, deliberately making the flow less efficient but more practical. "Sometimes you need redundancy, backup systems, ways to keep things running even when they're not perfect." With a hiss of releasing pressure, a hidden compartment opened in the deck. Inside was what appeared to be a simple power converter, exactly like the one Sarah had used countless times in her garage. But just like the other pieces, this one held far more power than its mundane appearance suggested. The moment Sarah touched it, her pendant and the regulator from Kera's Prime began to pulse in resonance. All three pieces of her grandmother's power core finally united. That's when everything went wrong. The ship shuddered as something large slammed into it. Warning lights flashed in their helmets. The hull had been breached. "Multiple boarders," Xerix reported. "They must have detected the power spike when the pieces resonated." Sarah quickly secured the power core pieces. "Time to go." They ran for the airlock, but found their path blocked by armed figures in advanced combat suits. More attackers were coming from the other direction, weapons ready. "Surrender the power core," a synthesized voice demanded. "You're surrounded." Sarah looked around the corridor, her mechanic's mind racing. "Surrounded, maybe," she said, "but not trapped." She pulled out her trusted wrench. "Want to see why my grandmother chose a mechanic as her heir?" In one swift movement, she slammed the wrench into a nearby pipe. Steam burst forth, filling the corridor with a blinding cloud. The attackers' advanced sensors, designed to penetrate any normal visual obstacle, were overwhelmed by the simple physics of superheated vapor. Now, Sarah grabbed Xerix and kicked off from the deck, using the escaping steam as propulsion. They shot through a gap in the confused attackers, making their way to a maintenance shaft. "The airlock's blocked," Xerix warned. "Who said we're going to the airlock?" Sarah pulled out a cutting torch. Simple oxygen and acetylene, no electronics required. Sometimes you have to make your own exits. She cut through the hull, the torch's flame bright in the darkness. As the circle was almost complete, she braced herself. "Hold on." The section of hull blew outward, carried by the escaping air. Sarah and Xerix were pulled out with it, exactly as she'd planned. They flew through space, using the debris field for cover as they made their way back to their ship. "Nax," Sarah called over the radio. "Time for pickup." Their ship appeared from behind a larger wreck, positioned perfectly to catch them. As soon as they were aboard, Nax fired the engines, weaving through the debris field with practiced skill. Behind them, the maintenance ship erupted in a series of explosions as the various factions fought over an empty prize. But Sarah had what they'd come for, all 3 pieces of her grandmother's power core. As they raced back toward Haven's crown, Sarah examined the united pieces. Together, they formed something far more powerful than their parts suggested, just like the Empire itself. "My grandmother didn't just hide these pieces," she said softly. "She created a test, a way to make sure her heir understood both the advanced technology of the Empire and the practical knowledge needed to use it wisely." "And now that we have all 3 pieces?" Xerix asked. Sarah smiled, already sketching new designs in her mind. "Now we build something they'll never expect, a network that combines the best of both worlds, Imperial technology and human ingenuity." The power core hummed with potential in her hands, ready to help forge a new future for the Empire. But first, they had some traitors to deal with. "Set course for Haven's crown," she ordered. "It's time to show everyone what a mechanic empress can really do." A new empire. Haven's crown was in chaos when they returned. The station's elegant crystalline corridors showed signs of battle, and emergency crews worked to contain numerous breaches. But Sarah didn't head for the command center or the council chambers. Instead, she went straight to her workshop. "Your Majesty," Nax protested, "the station is under attack. The traitors." "Will come to us," Sarah finished, laying out the 3 pieces of the power core on her workbench. "They want this. Let's give them something to really worry about." Her hands moved with confidence born from years of mechanical experience combined with inherited Imperial knowledge. The 3 pieces of the power core clicked together perfectly, but Sarah didn't stop there. She began integrating them with her network prototype, adding modifications that would have seemed insane to traditional Imperial engineers. "What are you doing?" Xerix asked, watching as she connected seemingly incompatible technologies. "Something my grandmother would have appreciated," Sarah replied, threading simple copper wire through quantum matrices, taking the best of both worlds and making something new. The station shuddered as another attack hit their defenses. Through the viewport, they could see multiple ships, both Syndicate and traitor Imperial vessels, moving into position. "They're preparing for a final assault," Nax reported. "Our remaining loyalist ships can't hold them all off." Sarah didn't look up from her work. They won't have to. Almost done. She made a final connection, and the combined power core began to hum with energy. But instead of channeling it into weapons or shields, Sarah had built something entirely different. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, straightening up, "welcome to the first test of the new Imperial Mechanics Network." She activated the system, and streams of energy began pulsing out from Haven's crown in all directions. But unlike traditional Imperial technology, these pulses followed paths that seemed to defy logic, twisting through simple mechanical relays before jumping to quantum nodes, combining primitive electronics with advanced alien science in ways that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. Broadcasting on all frequencies, Sarah said, reaching for a simple microphone. To everyone attacking this station, this is your Empress speaking, and I'm about to show you why you don't mess with a mechanic's tools. She threw a series of switches, and the network came fully online. Instantly, every ship in the vicinity found their advanced systems linked into a web they couldn't escape, but not through complex quantum entanglement or sophisticated AI. Sarah's network used basic mechanical principles amplified by Imperial technology, creating something that was both incredibly powerful and impossible to hack. You tried to use our own technology against us, Sarah broadcast to the attacking ships. But you forgot something important. The simplest solutions are often the best ones. With a few keystrokes, she demonstrated her point. The attacking ships' engines shut down, their weapons went dark, and their quantum communications fell silent. But their life support, running through Sarah's deliberately primitive backup systems, remained functional. Right now, your ships are being held in place by what amounts to a really big magnet, she explained, unable to keep a small note of satisfaction from her voice. Sometimes old tech is the best tech. In the silence that followed, Sarah turned to address the station's internal communications. To all Imperial citizens and soldiers, your neural implants have been temporarily disconnected from the main network. You're free from any outside control. The choice of who to serve is yours again. The response was immediate. All across Haven's crown, security forces who had been under the traitor's influence came back to themselves. Coordinated through Sarah's new network, a system that combined the best of Imperial and human technology, they quickly began retaking control of the station. Councillor Venn and his conspirators are being apprehended, Nax reported with satisfaction. The Syndicate ships are requesting permission to surrender. Sarah nodded, watching through the viewport as order was restored, but she wasn't finished yet. Walking to the center of her workshop, she activated a holographic broadcast to the entire Empire. "This is Empress Sarah Chen," she began, standing proud in her grease-stained mechanic's jumpsuit. "Today, we faced a threat from those who believed that advanced technology alone makes an empire strong. They were wrong. True strength comes from understanding both the complex and the simple, the advanced and the practical." She gestured to her network interface, where Imperial and human technology work together in harmony. From this day forward, the Empire will embrace both paths. Every Imperial citizen will learn not just to use our advanced technology, but to understand the basic principles behind it. Every ship will have backup systems that can't be hacked. Every station will have manual overrides that can't be compromised. She smiled, thinking of her grandmother's bookstore back in Seattle. "My predecessor was wise enough to see that the Empire needed something new, someone who could bridge the gap between the advanced and the practical. That's why she chose a mechanic as her heir." The holographic display showed the new network spreading across Imperial space, connecting worlds not just through quantum technology, but through the combination of new and old that made it far more resilient than either alone. To those who would threaten this empire, Sarah continued, her voice firm, "Know this. We are no longer dependent solely on advanced technology. We have something far more powerful, the wisdom to know when to use it and when to trust in simpler solutions." She looked down at her hands, still covered in grease and scratches from the day's work. "I am Sarah Chen, an empress who isn't afraid to get her hands dirty. A mechanic who understands both the most advanced technology in the galaxy and the basic tools that built civilizations. And this is my empire, not perfect, not always elegant, but always working, always adapting, always moving forward." The workshop erupted in cheers as the last of the resistance crumbled. Sarah's network had done more than just stop an attack. It had transformed the empire itself, creating something new and uniquely powerful. "Your grandmother would be proud," Zurich said softly. Sarah touched the power core, feeling its energy pulse in harmony with her combined network. She knew what she was doing, she replied. She knew the Empire needed someone who could see both the big picture and the small details, someone who could appreciate the most advanced technology in the galaxy, but never forget the importance of a simple wrench. Looking out at the stars through Haven's Crown's viewport, Sarah could see the future taking shape, an empire that combined the best of all worlds, united by a network that was both incredibly advanced and fundamentally simple. It wasn't the empire her grandmother had ruled, but it was the empire she had prepared for, one tool at a time. So, Nax asked, "What's our next project?" Sarah grinned, already pulling out her tools. "Well, I've had some ideas about improving the station's waste recycling system." And so the Mechanic Empress went back to work, building a future that was neither purely imperial nor purely human, but something new and wonderful, one repair, one improvement, one innovation at a time. After all, that's what good mechanics do. They fix things, they make them better, and they never stop learning new ways to keep the universe running smoothly.